Dark and Light is a new survival game published by Snail USA. It's available on Steam and it's in early access at the moment. The game is not yet completed, it's at a very early stage. Dark and Light is a survival game, and that means it's hard, it's a challenging game to play. The aim of the game is pretty much just to stay alive. Your character enters a world with almost nothing, they have some basic clothing, but that's all. And they're given some guidance as to what to do. They're told to go and gather berries and gather other items from bushes, just to pick items up off the ground. Now, when you first play the game, what you're going to be doing is crafting some basic tools and equipment. An axe, a pickaxe, a basic sword, and a staff, because this is a fantasy game. So you make a staff to cast spells. And as the game progresses, you create more and more complex equipment. Eventually, you'll build a house and you'll use items in a house, such as a workbench and a forge, to create more equipment. So, in a sense, the game is all about progressing. You start off with almost nothing. You start off with a character which has very little in the way of skills, abilities, or items. And as you play the game, you pick up more skills, you pick up more items or create more items, and you create the ability, you learn the ability to create more complex items. And those help you to stay alive. One of the most famous survival games is Ark, which takes place in a world full of dinosaurs. Other survivor games take place in a horror setting, a world full of zombies, for example. Dark and Light is quite unusual. Dark and Light takes place in a fantasy world. So it's quite a traditional world for video games. You see this a lot, particularly in MMOs. Dark and Light isn't an MMO. You'll only get up to a maximum of 70 people on the server currently, at least on the official servers. But it does have many of the elements that you expect to find in a traditional MMO. You can wear armor, you can use a sword, you can use other weapons such as spears to attack people. But you can also use magic spells. So you can craft items which allow you to heal yourself, which create a light source for a new player when you're out in the dark at night. And you can cast spells, you can cast fireballs, you can cast lightning belts from your staff. Now, in Dark and Light, your character has a number of needs. So this goes beyond, in most games, in most traditional games, you'd have hit points, and if your hit points go down to 0, then you die. Dark and Light is a survival game, so this means you also need food, you need water. If you run out of food, then you'll die, and you better get some food source very soon if you're going hungry. Also, if you run out of water, you better go to a river or to a lake and get some water, or at least hope that you get rained on, because that cures your thirst for some reason. If you're in a very hot environment and you need to find some way to cool down, otherwise you might be damaged. You'll find that you lose hit points, you also get hungry. Equally, if you're in a very cold environment, you need to find a way to warm up. Now, in Dark and Light, that's actually a bit easier than in some other games, because you can use magic to cool yourself down or heat yourself up. In fact, there's a lot of magical abilities that will help you to stay alive. Crafting plays a huge role in this game. You need to craft a lot to stay alive. So you can craft all sorts of items. That includes weapons, armor, you can make food, you can craft magic stuff and create spells for that staff, and then you can swap the spells. You equip the spells to your staff a little bit like ammunition, so you can change from one spell to another that way. You can craft little magic items that only work once or twice, which might heal you, which might create a light source for you, which might, one of them actually cast a map on the ground so you can see where you are. You can craft a magic ability which teleports you to the nearest town, because in this game you have towns. There are actually 3 factions in this game. You choose one of 3 factions, and whichever faction you belong to, that determines your starting town, and you can return to that town. It's a relatively safe space. There are guards, although it's not entirely safe, and you can actually sell items to NPCs there and earn some gold. You can buy items from the NPCs, such as mounts and horses. As the game progresses, there's more and more that you can craft in the game. As you level up in the game, you gain skills, so you can choose where to put your skill points. This could be in health, stamina, focus, carrying ability, mana, because you need to use mana to cast spells. So if you run out of mana, you can't cast your spells anymore, so having a high mana might help in that respect. Stamina, which allows you to run for longer, and also to use certain combat abilities which take stamina. So you can level up your skills that way every time you gain a level. You also gain skills when it comes to learning new engrams, new items that you can build. Now, there are two elements to this. They are determined partly by your level, so there are certain engrams that you just cannot learn until you reach a certain level. So whatever you do in the game, you can craft, say, a basic sword at level 1 or level 2, but you can't craft a more complex sword until later on, a better sword until later on. Also, however, you need to level up those skill lines specifically. So if you want to level up your melee weapons to craft a better sword, then there are certain things you need to do as well as gaining levels. That can mean crafting melee items. That can mean mining certain elements which you use to create those items. It might be as simple as just chopping trees, which you're going to do anyway. If you want to level up air magic, for example, then you need to kill flying creatures. Killing a flying creature will level up your air magic. And also, of course, you need to gain levels. So, as you're playing the game, you'll see in the bottom left hand corner, your abilities are leveling up. And as they level up, those are skill lines for learning new engrams, in other words, for learning new things that you can craft. As they level up, you'll discover that you can craft new things. So, you need to both level your character by gaining experience and level the specific skill lines. But what you'll find is that those skill lines will level on their own more or less, because if you are playing the game in a certain way, for example, if you are using lots of fire magic, which means that you need to use sulfur as an ingredient, you're probably mining lots of sulfur. Well, the act of mining the sulfur levels up your fire magic. So you can just play the game, you don't need to grind out your skills, but you will find that whatever you're doing is leveling certain skill lines as well as simply benefiting you by giving you more materials or whatever it is you're trying to do in the game. As with many survival games, housing is very important. One of the first things that a lot of people do, although you need to play the game a little bit before you are able to do this, is to start crafting a basic thatch house. You can also craft stone houses, wooden houses. There are metal houses that I haven't seen any in the game yet, and I believe that you can craft houses made out of magical material. Now, um, players can attack your house. They can break in and steal your stuff. So one of the goals, one of the things that you might try to do, is to build your house in an out-of-the-way place. You might also look at protecting your house, and I believe, although I haven't seen this myself yet because the game is fairly new and I haven't been playing very long. In fact, nobody's been playing very long. There are ways of protecting your house, of setting up NPCs, and you can actually tame animals which will protect the house. You can also, and I have actually seen this, put a magical shield around your house to stop other people attacking it, although that means that they can still attack it if they declare war against your guild. Housing is also very important as a place to store your items, and also you can install certain machinery in there, workbenches, a magic summoning pool, for example, various magical items which you can use to craft complex items. Because when you're playing this game, you can craft simple items just by having the material in your backpack and making the item. But as the game gets more complex, as you become more powerful, you will discover that you need to use machinery to make certain items. So to make armor, for example, metal armor, you need a forge. You need to get metal. You need to put the basic metal into the forge. That creates ingots, and then you need to take the ingots and take them to a workbench. And in the workbench, you craft the armor. So you need a house in order to do this, because you need a house to put your machinery. Now, you don't need your own house. You can join a guild. Rather confusingly in this game, guilds are called houses. A different type of house. I'm just going to call them a guild. You can join a guild, and everybody in the guild can share a house and share all the equipment. But housing in the game is really important. This game has mounts. You can buy a horse, and you can also tame animals. You can build a saddle and tame an animal. Taming is a skill line, so you will need to progress in taming before you can tame the more difficult animals. And I believe you can also summon animals. Again, this is something which is in the game, a summoning pool. I haven't seen this myself, but you can kill an elemental, take the core of an elemental, which is an item it drops as loot, and put it in a summoning pool and summon an elemental, which you can then tame. So taming animals is important both for protection of your property and also as a mount, as something you can ride around on. Combat is a very important part of the game, as you would expect. You need to gather certain materials from animals, and such as hides and meat, to craft items and just to stay alive, because eating meat is a good way to cure your hunger. And as the game progresses, there are more complex and important items that you need to get from certain fantastic creatures which are in the game. Now, there are various forms of combat. You can use melee combat using a sword or a spear or daggers. You can use ranged combat such as a bow and arrow, a crossbow, and you can use spells. And spells become very interesting and powerful as the game progresses. You can use fireballs, you can use lightning bolts. There are other forms of magic too, ice bolts. You can pick up a boulder from the ground and drop it on your opponent. You can play on a PvP server in this game. This is really a PvP game. It's played best, I think, on a PvP server, and I think most people do play it on PvP servers. PvP can be quite brutal. If you die, then your corpse lies on the ground, and anybody can loot your corpse. You can run back to your corpse and try to loot it, but there's a good chance that somebody's killed you. They're going to take all your stuff. I should note, by the way, the fact that it's a PvP server means that people can loot your corpse even if you just log off, which is another reason to build a house, so that you log off inside your house where you're safe. It does mean that people can break into your house as well, so you need to try to protect your house. And it means that if you are unconscious for any reason, people can loot your corpse. It means if you die from an animal, from a NPC or a mob, as people say, you can run back and try to loot your corpse, but somebody else who just wanders past might see it and they can loot it. So it's quite a brutal game. You don't need to play on a PvP server, you can play on a PvE server. But this is a survival game. It's quite a brutal game, it's quite hard, and but the PvP is fun, and obviously it makes the game more challenging for those people who enjoy it. Dark and Light's graphics are okay. They're not fantastic, they're good, they're workable. If you look at the videos created by the publishers Snail Games, they look amazing. The graphics look fantastic in those videos. They don't look as good as that on my screen. The game isn't really optimized brilliantly, so I've had to turn some of the settings down. You probably will have to do the same. Maybe that's why the graphics aren't quite as good as perhaps they should be. However, they're perfectly workable, they're fine, they're not going to upset anybody, they're just not amazing. And what the game does have is a lot of atmosphere. There's a lot of fantastic areas to look at, lots of creepy places, lots of interesting places to find. And in that sense, the game does look good, and you really do feel as if you're in a fantasy world with lots to find and lots to explore. So it's playable, it's good fun. The frame rate, I get about 30 frames a second. The game is still being optimized and it is getting better, but at this stage, the frame rate is not as good as it could be. Overall, I find Dark and Light to be a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying it. It's had some bad reviews. Some of those bad reviews are based on what the game was like in the first couple of days after early access. So far, we're only, I think, about a bit more than a week after early access. The game has already improved. The developers are optimizing it and making it better and dealing with a lot of the server-side issues as well as the client-side graphical issues that people were experiencing. The game is in a much better state than Ark was when it first released. Ark is a survival game which is similar to Dark and Light, it uses a similar engine. Dark and Light is in a much better state than Ark was when Ark was new. There's a lot of content, perhaps surprisingly at this stage. There's a lot of different animals and monsters. There's a hell of a lot to do in terms of the skill lines, things to learn, things to craft. It's very complex and detailed. The combat is quite good fun. I enjoy fighting with magic. The magic spells are enjoyable. They make for a good fight. And overall, this game I'm really enjoying it. It's a shame that it's a bad launch, a difficult launch, has given it a bad reputation. But I think this game has a lot of promise. It's going to be in early access for about a year. I think it's well worth picking up and trying out. My name is Palmer. Thank you very much indeed for listening.